Welcome, everybody. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. Please post your questions in the chat. We'll try to address them as we go through it, but we'll definitely leave some time at the end to try to address whatever questions you have. Also, please mute. This is a Teams meeting, so while the presenters are presenting, if you would mute, we'd greatly appreciate it. This session is being recorded, and I will send a link to everybody that has registered for this session. So my name is Jack Kelly. I'm a director for business applications for state and local government for Microsoft across the country. I'm joined here today with some good friends from HSO, and I'll give the floor to them here in a minute, but I'd just like to share a couple ideas from Microsoft before we get into the solution itself. So everything at Microsoft begins with our cloud. In my humble opinion, we've built the most robust cloud in the industry. We have thousands of data centers all across the globe, but we understand that our customers have data residency requirements. And because of that, we've divided our array of data centers into 61 different regions. We've also created a government cloud. And a lot of folks ask me, why did we create a government cloud? The main reason why we created it, in addition to the safety and security features that we've added to the government cloud, it's really for our customers to be able to meet whatever government-specific requirements they have, whether it's CJIS or FedRAMP, StateRAMP. You can see down in the lower left corner of this slide all the different government-specific requirements that we help our customers meet with the government cloud. So what resides in the government cloud? So most everybody is very familiar with Microsoft 365, our productivity office applications, but our fastest growing area is Microsoft business applications. And that's what we're here to talk about today. You may know the brand names Dynamics and the Power Platform, and we'll go through how that fits into it. And then, of course, Azure is our software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service array of cloud services that we provide. So Microsoft provides the technical underpinnings, right? All the disaster recovery, failover, all the things that you would need for an application itself. But then the application itself is very robust. It is a fully featured CRM system, so similar to what you might see from Salesforce or ServiceNow. It is also a fully functioning ERP system, similar to what you might see from SAP or Workday. But the industry-leading tools that we add to our business applications, the Power Platform, which consists of Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and just most recently released Power Pages, the portal applications, are the most robust group of featured functionality for our business applications, we believe, in the industry. But the true power of these applications is our partners and how they configure our applications to work for your specific needs. And now right here today, we're going to talk about modernizing critical infrastructure applications, and our friends at HSO are going to talk about that. But it is the templates and accelerators that they've worked with their partners that add to that. So Microsoft is responsible for all the formal functionality, the technical underpinnings, the safety, the security, everything that you would see in a cloud SaaS solution. But it's HSO's templates and accelerators that really bring these solutions to life. I'm very proud to have worked with HSO on a lot of projects, dozens of projects across state and local government customers. They are one of our most trusted partners. They are cloud certified across multiple aspects of our applications. And quite frankly, for government customers, I believe they bring the most experienced set of consultants to every project. So with that, let me turn it over to my good friends at HSO, and they're going to show you what we've put together for you today.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you for inviting us to participate again in this series of educational webinars that you host for state and local governments. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Modernizing Your Government's Critical Infrastructure, How Microsoft Technology Can Fill Service Gaps and Improve Efficiency. My name is Petra Einmiller, a Senior Marketing Manager at HSO, a global award-winning Microsoft partner, and I'll be moderating the presentation. As Jack said, today's session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared with you in the next few business days. Today, we're going to kick off with a quick introduction, then dive into critical infrastructure challenges and opportunities. Next, we'll tackle a critical infrastructure use case and share a detailed demo. Then we'll address any questions you have and finish up with next steps. Our presenters today are Costa Segizi, EVP of Sales at HSO US, and Max Dinzer, a pre-sales consultant at HSO Innovation. We want to keep this session as interactive as possible, and we already have a head start. You, the attendees, asked a lot of great questions via the registration form. We're going to try to answer as many as possible with the critical infrastructure use case and demo portion of today's presentation. However, if we don't answer your question or you would like further clarification, please feel free to put your questions in the chat, as Jack said at the beginning, and we'll address them at the end of today's session. If we don't get to your question, we'll follow up with you after the presentation. And now I'd like to hand it over to Costa.
Excellent. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. We're very pleased and happy to present and demonstrate how Microsoft and HSO are coming together to modernize critical infrastructure. So my first part of the job is to set the scene here. Why is it that we're trying to attack the critical infrastructure? So we'd like to start this conversation with current state. What's driving some of the strain in our current infrastructure? Well, first of all, we've got, there was a great survey done by the ESI Thought Lab that 53% of people responding highlighted that they have changed due to the pandemic. They've changed the way they work, the way they live, and the things that they're expecting from their communities. They live in different places, they live in smaller communities. And that's putting an immense pressure on communities that might not have been designed to do that. On the other side, a survey that was done to infrastructure respondents highlighted that 83% of them had said that their infrastructure had been somehow gone under some cyber attack over the last couple of years. So we're seeing cyber attack at a daily event. And not only does it impact our own privacy, but it could potentially impact our operations and our infrastructure, such as electrical grids and others. The extreme weather events that we're all seeing them, we're all witnessing them on a regular basis, whether it's the flooding that's happening in Florida, the wildfires in the West Coast, and the infrastructure that needs to be there to respond to these catastrophes, whether it's on the city level, agency level, or departmental level. And then finally, we're seeing outdated systems. We keep on hearing that critical infrastructure and agencies are running with outdated solutions or manual solutions, which causes a response time to be able to address things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. So we're seeing these big events, big components that are driving this impact into our infrastructure. Sure. And it would be great to actually be able to blame everything to the extreme weather. But the reality is that this has been an ongoing event. And the American Society of Civil Engineers have posted a report card for the 2001 rating for the infrastructure in the United States. The current grade is a C minus. Yet better than it was probably about 10, 12 years ago, where the grade was about a D, or could he get above D? But the reality is that the infrastructure was already in a challenging situation, and these current events are impacting it even more. There are some interesting stats that when I started reading through this, it was very overwhelming. One, this interesting one, every 2 minutes is a water main break, which causes about 6 billion gallons of treated water lost on a daily basis. 43% of our roadways in conditions that are creating traffic, which obviously create a challenge in pollution and other areas. And then about 30,000 miles of levee systems that is in questionable condition due to insufficient inspections or other timely inspections. So as you think about this, it's creating a fairly bleak picture of where we are today. But it's during these times that opportunities arise to address these problems. And this is where we see success, when there's a partnership between government and businesses that come together to address big challenges. From the government perspective, we've seen a couple interesting events with the government creating funding for specific areas. First, around Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is a direct tackle towards the upgrading our infrastructure system. The Inflation Reduction Act, which aiming to tackle the energy challenges that we're all plagued with. And then finally, the American Rescue Plan, which is focused on emergency funding for state and local government to deal with some of the events that I highlighted earlier. So the government is doing what it needs to be doing. On the business side, we are seeing the business stepping up, and we're seeing some interesting technology trends that are having a direct impact on some of these challenges. Areas such as intelligent asset management, GIS, smart initiatives that are driving digital transformation in managing and upgrading infrastructure. And Microsoft is doing its part by driving innovation in areas such as modernizing public utilities, which is focusing on secure, efficient, and compliant infrastructure to build and upgrade facilities, deliver urban innovation with focus on residential services, enable intelligent transportation, and then finally deploy sustainable infrastructure to focus on environmental sustainability obligations. So these are some great things that Microsoft is putting together. And for the rest of the presentation, I'll allocate enough time for Max to actually go through and present examples of how Microsoft technologies, along with HSO's expertise, are coming together to provide solutions to some of these challenges.
Thank you very much as a beginning for these great introductions, by the way, because I'm going to be coming back to a few topics that Jake as well as Costas have raised. And before we do that, I have to bore you a little bit more with PowerPoint slides just to talk about a few concepts in smart infrastructure and buildings and how Microsoft is solving that from a conceptual perspective. Then we're going to jump into a demonstration of the solution where I'm going to showcase the Microsoft Cloud. As said in the beginning, there's multiple components to it. We're going to see business applications like field service and our facility management component to it, but we're also going to see ERP components that help us manage these facilities and locations from a financial aspect. What we also brought with us today is what Microsoft calls Azure and the Internet of Things, as well as digital twins. So how can we actually create a digital twin that reports back telemetry data based on the experience and based on the location that we have? And therefore, it's important to understand that there is actually a lot of concepts driving what the Microsoft Cloud brings together. First of all, it's going to be millennials, which is a workforce that is going away, is well educated from the typical hands-on work from being a technician. So how do we solve that challenge? One of the answers could be technology and enabling them and allowing them to work with the tools they are used to do, but also backend automation. If we can fully automate a construction process in the future with 3D printing, or if we can fully automate a water plant, think about the 6 billion liters of water that Kostas just mentioned. If we can automate these processes, monitor the environment and have insights into that and react in a right manner, then we can actually simplify the world and improve these capabilities. You see a lot of more capabilities on that slide, like the well building standard that we need to be compliant on, but also something that has faced us all, which is COVID-19, and which still is a challenge in the world and still means we have to be careful from a security perspective. Also, it taught us what does it actually mean if we don't have access to certain environments, and Microsoft can help in that manner. What I also brought with me today is just a few examples of where we actually work in public works and infrastructures, which is the Royal BAM Group, which is one of the largest construction companies in Europe. But it's also a government-owned company by the Dutch government. HSO is headquartered in the Netherlands, has a large presence in the US. The US is in the meantime our biggest market. But we started in facilities and public works with the Royal BAM Group. And Royal BAM Group actually maintains a lot of hyperscale facilities. You see a stadium, which is the Johan Cruijff Arena, the Ajax Amsterdam soccer stadium. But BAM also maintains Schiphol Airport, and BAM is also responsible for the Museum of the Future in Dubai. In 2018, actually, BAM got the contract to maintain Schiphol Airport and also to maintain all of the 17,000 assets that are across all of the terminals. So think of lifts, toilets, everything that goes beyond that. And that was quite of a challenge. We helped BAM in implementing a field service solution that allowed them to maintain the airport, but also to connect and integrate into the assets and get telemetry reading data out of that. One of the funny scenarios that we actually implemented over there is if an Airbus A380 lands, then a lot of people are going to go through the gate. So that's a point where you typically don't want to serve or clean or repair the toilets. So we are monitoring when Airbus lands at which gate, so we don't block the toilets at this area. Those are informations how you can basically take a location and infrastructure, get information out of it and its surrounding, and do intelligent reports basically on that to drive your business applications like your field service management system or your billing system. And BAM is really an expert in doing that in the meantime. They are now also responsible for building the Museum of the Future in Dubai, which is suited with more than 50,000 sensors and is going to be fully maintained and constructed by BAM in the name of the Dubai government. Next to that, what I also want to introduce you to is not only business applications and the Power Platform, but also the capabilities of Azure and the capabilities of the Internet of Things that Microsoft brings to the table. So what you're going to see today is Azure IoT Central, as well as what I brought with me is an example of a digital twin. Why do we do that? Because first of all, we have sustainability commitments, and I personally believe the Internet of Things could be the answer on solving these challenges that we have, because if we can report on water levels, if we can report on carbon output, if we can report on certain kind of capabilities and automate things, we can significantly improve these values. And the Internet of Things can be a big helper for that. But also from a maintenance perspective, I'm actually born and raised in Germany. You might have heard that already by the accent. In the city where I live is the headquarters of the BASF, which is the largest chemical company of the world. So there's a a lot of critical infrastructure over there. And actually, what happens to the government over there and the local authorities and the public works department is that they built 2 bridges. Ludwigshafen and Mannheim are 2 cities connected to each other. And both bridges in the same year had maintenance issues, were nearly down to breakdown. But a lot of people were coming over the bridge to get to their work. So it was a critical phase over 5 years where there was a big failure because these 2 bridges haven't been maintained and planned properly. And therefore, the Internet of Things and a right field service management application are an important factor, because we can go from traditional break fix if something breaks and then we repair it, towards really a cognitive maintenance approach. You see the scale that's going up basically over here, and that's where the power of IoT and the Microsoft Business application comes into play, because we can predict breakdowns based on condition monitoring, and we can prevent scenarios with the bridges that I was talking about. But enough from a PowerPoint level. Let's jump right into the presentation that I've prepared for you today. And in the screenshots, you basically see an example of what we call an Azure digital twin. And that's now the area of the Microsoft platform where we are in the area of Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud infrastructure. So think of service, but also think of digital twins. Think of all cloud transformation capabilities that you basically can have. And a digital twin is, as the name already says, digital twin of a real-life environment. That could be, as you see in this picture, a water plant in your local area. But it could be many kind of things. It could be, for example, a windmill farm, as you can see over here. It could also be an element refinery. And you can basically break that down to any kind of location or facility. BAM is also using these digital twins to maintain Schiphol Airport, because it gives them a quick virtual overview of the complete facility, as well as we can zoom into certain kind of areas. So for example, if I want to jump into here, I immediately see that tank 2 actually has high emission in this methane production. So we can get data out of the environment without actually being present. And if you think about the COVID times, we all had to work from home. This is a perfect solution that allows you to fully automatically operate environments, but also to manage dangers, risks, security assessments within environments. If we go back to the water plant example, I can manage the quality of the water. I see how high the copper corrosion is. I can also see that the production process is maybe currently in filling and close to a dangerous level. So with telemetry data, I can really get information out of my environment and react properly on that. And behind this digital twin is what we call Azure IoT Central. And Azure IoT Central is a SaaS application platform from Microsoft that allows you to build dashboards, information, and get that out of telemetry data like you've seen in the digital twin. So that's now in a more simplified way, that tank that we've just been looking at. And I can get all kinds of information. I can build these dashboard in a drag and drop kind of way, as you can see, pie charts, bar charts, whatever I basically want to. But it allows me to really get deep down insights on the current condition of this specific asset. Also, I can completely and remotely communicate with this asset. So I can activate, deactivate certain kind of components. I can send firmware updates, update the sensors. Imagine the amount of cost a government could save if it doesn't have to go somewhere and install certain new things. Think about your electrical grid. Every meter you have to install a new software on. That would cost you, if you have 50,000 meters and every travel costs you $10, then you're already at a cost of 500K. With this application, we could have one click, update the firmware version, and it could save you a lot of money in that kind of way, because we can do over-the-air updates completely from a remote kind of way. Next to that, Azure IoT Central also, besides the analysis, allows us to actually do and operate on certain things, because we can define rules within the Microsoft ecosystem. And rules allow us to apply a certain logic. So we don't actually have to interact with this anymore. We can fully automate certain kind of processes and connect that also to our business applications or to our modern workplace applications. Because if you have a look at this rule, you're going to see that I have a target device, which could be in that case a smart meter. And then I can define a certain kind of condition. And that can be everything from an engine that is overheating over a period of time, or a certain voltage reading that I have out of my energy meter. As you can see, I have the condition voltage reading is greater than a maximum of 100 over a period of 5 minutes, which allows me to trigger a certain kind of condition. And based on that condition, I can perform a certain kind of action. And these actions, they allow me to route any kind of information or trigger any kind of business process within the Microsoft ecosystem, but also beyond the Microsoft ecosystem. You see, we have 6 examples of processes that we could do. We could send out a simple email. So for your service technicians, or for basically the people within your local authority, you could inform them via email that the voltage reading is too high, or you could inform them about a critical condition. Or if we take the water example again, that we are losing water, something like that could be sent out via an email to a supervisor. He can react on it. Sending out an email if you lose water is maybe too late. So we want to maybe act immediately. That's why we can use Microsoft Power Automate, which allows us to connect within the Microsoft Business Applications ecosystem and, for example, immediately plan a technician or close the valve of the water pump, automate certain kind of processes within the Microsoft Business Applications. We can also use webhooks. If you want to place it on a website, put certain kind of information out of the ecosystem, then you can do that as well. We can use Azure Monitor Action Groups, which would allow us to do analysis and machine learning on that as well. And we can also use Azure Logic Apps, which would allow us to put that into an SAP ERP system, Salesforce. So any kind of business application outside of the Microsoft ecosystem can also get information from Azure IoT Central to a certain kind of condition. Microsoft really opened up its cloud to work with all kind of capabilities, and now has great integration scenarios into the other platforms as well. And that's, I think, what the key is about sharing data in a secured kind of manner. Let's get into the Microsoft Business Applications a little bit, because now we've monitored an environment and basically performed certain kind of rules. And these rules, they can actually fly. As you can see, as I've defined over here, there's a Microsoft Power Automate workflow that puts exactly this IoT alert now in my Dynamics 365 field service management system. So I get all of the information, I get the telemetry reading and the code from it, and I have the capability with a business process workflow designer to define what am I going to do with this alert. There could be different kind of alerts. If we are losing water, that might be critical. Inform someone about that condition. So we can route based on criticality and different kind of readings where this information should be going. And that could be either creating a case or a ticket, as you basically want to call it. So someone within your authority is informed about it, or we could say, please immediately create a work order because I have to send someone there to solve this issue. This is really a critical state. And I also have that connected right to my assets. As you can see, it has automatically created multiple work orders for me where I can have different kind of work order types as well. Maybe I want to do inspections. Maybe I want to do a preventive maintenance job around that, trigger certain kind of things. And what I showed you before on the dashboard is that we can actually communicate with certain assets and telemetry readings. We can also do that not only within the Azure IoT framework, but we can also do that within the Microsoft Business Applications. So as a field service technician, back office person, someone who is working for your authority, I could send a command from here, update the firmware, maybe turn it on and off again. If you think about energy, you could shut down things at a certain timing, manage the facility, and therefore save the energy around that. So a lot of capabilities, and via send command, I can really communicate with this specific asset. The field service application of Microsoft also allows us to do way more. And HSO has an accelerator, which we call Advanced Field Service, that specifically focuses on facility management and critical infrastructures. This is used by a lot of energy companies. It's used by BAM, the company that I've been mentioning before. Siemens is one of our customers, Siemens Smart Infrastructure in Germany, a couple of government companies as well. And this application really allows you to manage and maintain large-scale facilities, because we can create assets in structures. As you can see, we have a designer over here where we can create them in multiple levels deep. I could add a battery to my structure underneath here, but we can do the same for a facility as well. So we can actually link locations and assets to each other. And that's exactly what BUM is doing. They have more than 17,000 assets with these structures across the multiple terminals at Schiphol Airport, and therefore maintain the whole facility as well as the assets that are within the facility. You can also do that with agreements and what we also call so-called subcontractor agreements, a typical thing that we see rising in this area of critical infrastructure, as well as that most of the authorities or the government are a little bit confronted with labor shortage, and it's difficult to get good technicians that really work for the government. So a lot of authorities basically get subcontractors like BUM, like other companies, to maintain facilities for them they've constructed in the name of the government. And therefore, we have that agreement capability where we can actually define so-called agreement types, where we can say, okay, this Ecolab water plant digital twin that you've been seeing before, that belongs to the city of Redmond in this scenario, and is certain agreements across multiple assets, but also across multiple locations. Here I see all of the assets that are going to be maintained. We can see the exchanges and the containers that we've seen before on the digital twin, now as physical assets in our field service application. And for each of these assets or locations, we can define so-called coverage terms, because some assets might be more critical or more important than others. With coverage terms, we can define what kind of work is being covered by a certain kind of subcontractor who is responsible for it, as well as we can also route certain things based on SLAs. So the criticality that I was talking about on the IoT alert is actually triggered also based on the agreement, based on what have we defined with the subcontractor, what are critical assets. You can see that the exchanger has a gold standard, while the container, for example, only has a silver standard. So based on that, the subcontractor has the capability to respond in different capabilities. Also, we can plan preventive visits based on booking setups with this, which allows us to define who is responsible on visiting certain kind of assets. If we jump into the details of this visit schedule, then you can actually see that I can define certain work types. In that case, that's a preventive maintenance type. I can define who's my preferred resource. In that case, that's my subcontractor track engineering. And is there maybe a certain start time that I want to add to that? And I can plan a sequence of visits over here. As you can see, I've planned 2 times per year up front, but we can design that fully freely and for each asset, as well as SLA that we basically define for this large scale facility that could be different and a different reoccurrence pattern, which allows us to really cover facilities based on the field service scenarios that we have. Next to that, we of course can put assets into the structures and define them in more detail. The structure designer I already showed you, but here I also have the overview of all of the assets and facilities that I basically maintain. And I can jump into this overview over here as well. I can link the asset itself with a certain location. If I jump into here, you can actually see where the physical address as well as the location is. So your technicians always know within a critical infrastructure where are the critical components, where's maybe a sensor, where's the device that is basically broken. And right on that, they can also see different kind of statuses. So we see this is currently under repair. We can store things like documentation. And of course, all of that is also fully integrated with the complete Microsoft Office 365, or as we nowadays call it, Microsoft 365. So I can communicate via Teams over here. I can export everything into an Excel sheet if I need to. I can create Word templates and PDFs from that. So the tools your employees as well as your workforce is basically currently using at the moment, they can use with these business applications as well. That's the field service part of it. As said in the beginning, there's also a finance component to this critical infrastructure, because you might want to write off certain facilities and infrastructures. You might want to monitor the capex and the spending that you have around that. as a government, that's really important because you always have to track the cost around that. And therefore, there's also a finance and operations application within the Microsoft ecosystem that allows us to onboard subcontractors, but also to manage fixed assets. As you can see over here, this is my overview of all of the fixed assets. You can recognize my Ecolab water plant. Again, we can have lands and buildings, so different kind of fixed assets that we can monitor from that perspective. If I jump into the next tab, you can see a more detailed view where we can see the actual total cost that we had over that record as well. We can manage the books from a financial perspective, all kinds of transactions and postings that we had around that, as well as the balances and also the valuations. What has it cost us to do the acquisition? If we deprecate it over the year, maybe we have special deprecation allowances. When can we write it off? So from a financial standpoint, this business application can also back you up with the right financial records. And it allows you to also onboard these subcontractors and vendors in a smart and sufficient way. We have a module over there, which is the accounts payable, where we have so-called workspaces where you can manage all of your vendors, where you also have the capability of managing the payments around the agreements that you have with your subcontractors or your vendors that help you in maintaining critical infrastructures, and where you can manage the payment flows. So you have an overview of all of my payments that have been going on. That's basically what we call a workspace that is really specifically created for a user and his responsibility. So here you will only see the vendors he is responsible for or the project he's currently allocated to. You can really modify these views towards the needs of the user. You can simply see here, personalize. I could say, hide that for me, add it. Any kind of information that you want to drag into it can be put into such a workspace, and that simplifies the daily life of your workforce as well. And managing, for example, things like a vendor onboarding process, which you could do over here. What Microsoft also brings to the table is what they call a so-called vendor collaboration portal. And the vendor collaboration portal allows you to grant access to subcontractors to your business application, either via a web portal or directly within the business application in a secured kind of way. If we move to this tab, then you can actually see that I'm now in this module of the vendor collaboration portal, which allows me to manage all of my contacts that have access to my business application right here. If someone gets access, he of course has certain security level settings, so you don't have to be worried that they can access your fixed asset information. We can fully hide any kind of information that you would like to have, as well as Microsoft is also top tier in what we call Azure Defender, certain security kind of levels where you can only allow access to read and write and certain kind of components in a secured kind of manner. And it also allows you to actually request quotations from customers. So within public works, we see a lot that large-scale projects are being planned. And if these large-scale projects are being done, they are not always only done by the authority. It's going to be outsourced towards the subcontractors partially, and therefore you maybe want to have them requests to certain quotations. And with the request for quotation, you can actually allow them to bid on certain kind of work. So this would be service work on the water plant that I showed you before, which allows to evaluate different kind of subcontractors. You can send multiple information out to them. You can define bidding items. You can set up questionnaires they have to fill out. They can then themselves submit or decline certain kind of bids, so they can fully access that information and basically apply like a tender towards your work. And you can also add multiple attachments over here. I was talking about the questionnaire. There, Microsoft also, with their modern workplace scenarios, have a tool that allows you to define these questionnaires. If you, for example, have a look over here, you can see that I have created just a couple of example questions. You can fully design them yourself, and these answers then fly into the vendor collaboration portal into the bid of the subcontractors as well. So it gives you a way of making sure, do I have the right subcontractors on board? Do they maybe have the right security certifications? Are they compliant to the WELL standard? Do they offer the right values as a company? So with that tool, we can really onboard vendors in a smart and efficient kind of way. and it fully automizes the process and digitalizes that process as well. And if the customer then basically gets in his bid, he would have access, like you can see it right now. He can do his submit here. He could type in his numbers and basically supply that towards us. And we on the front end would then see, okay, which subcontractors have been bidden. We could choose multiple of them in the list of all requests for quotation bids, where we can track the statuses of different kind of bid types as well and see their attachments and their answers. And that basically shows really from an end-to-end perspective how Microsoft can, with cloud technology like Azure and digital twins, monitor critical infrastructure, but it also can support you from a financial backbone perspective, from a field service and maintenance perspective across the board. Microsoft has applications that help you maintaining critical infrastructures. And therefore, at the end of my presentation, if there should be any open questions, let's move back towards the PowerPoint.
Thank you so much, Max, and thank you, Costa, and thank you again to Jack. Now we'd like to open it up to questions, so please put any questions you have in the chat.
And I want to highlight, we recognize that we shot a lot really fast, but these are big topics, and we can dive into a finite degree of detail in each one of them. The key thing here was not to go too deep into one area, but to show how the interconnectedness of a business application within Microsoft, powered by Azure and all the different components, investment areas that Microsoft is making, is looking to address different challenges within this topic. So feel free to ask more questions. We would love to get a little bit more detail as far as any areas of challenge that you might have and how we can deploy the right solution stack for the challenge that you have. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this was a lot more than what we first started off to show.
Jack, I believe this one's probably for you. How can Microsoft applications support strategic planning and engagement activities at an enterprise and team level?
Wow, that's a very broad question, right? So first, I want to thank you guys for that presentation. I don't think that I've seen a more robust presentation that spanned across not only business applications and really showed, some of the built functionality that's in field service and customer service capabilities, but then extended out into Azure and even used our modern work facilities to communicate with folks, and then layered in, things like IoT and, some of the more advanced technology. So well done, guys. I really greatly appreciate you being able to show that. So, to the point, I think that's a perfect example of, leveraging the power of Microsoft. It's not just a CRM system or field service system. When it fits within the Microsoft ecosystem, there's so much more advanced capabilities that you can bring to the table and work within one common set of tools to accomplish, all the things that you need. I would say, please engage us. We have lots of resources to bring to the table. As Kostas was saying, a lot of this can be overwhelming at times, but we try to componentize it and bring it together in a synergistic way for your specific organization.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Dave Bailey put a great question in chat. Do you have a discovery workshop or something to position with customers? And actually, can you advance to the next slide, Max? And do you want to speak to this, Costa?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely speak to this. So, and this is, again, goes back into the point that Jack just made, that this can be overwhelming. And we're finding ourselves engaging customers at a different level of understanding of the challenge that we're trying to tackle. So we don't really believe there's one size fits all. This really starts with us understanding what you're trying to tackle, and then what is the best way and the most effective way to get to the end result. We're finding customers that have a better appreciation of some of the problems, and they know potentially how to potentially go about fixing it, that a full diagnostic might be a better way to do this because it will allow us to get a lot more granular as a deliverable versus potential prospects that want to just discover, like even what we just did today with Max going into this end-to-end solution. What is the technology available to address challenges in this area? This is a sample of that. So we believe that the best way to really right-size this is to engage in a conversation. Ron Davis, who's also on this call, and his contact information is right here, is ready to respond to any of your inquiries. So please feel free to reach out to him.
There was another question in the chat about Azure being GCC compliant. Azure IoT is part of the Azure stack, and the general Azure stack based on the Azure Defender capabilities is GCC compliant. So everything you see within that cloud framework, and it was mentioned before from a government perspective, that is within that government cloud, that is GCC compliant. And Azure is one component of that. So the answer to that is yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Max. What tools and services does Microsoft provide to verify if your legacy applications can be easily shifted to the Azure cloud hosted infrastructure?
There is Azure cost calculator and assessment calculator in the web. You can Google that up. That allows customers to do some testing themselves. Actually, HSO in certain kind of areas, business applications have some assessments and discovery workshops that help you check that as well. And I'm sure Microsoft has more capabilities in that area as well.
Yeah, and specifically around business applications, we do have, if you're looking at migrating a on-premise business application solution, such an older version of our CRM solution to the cloud, we provide both tools and assessments to help you on that journey. And of course, if you do need some consulting help, our good friends at HSO are well-versed in helping you guys make those migrations.
Another one here. Is there a plan to shorten the time gap between releasing new features, for example, ABS, between Azure Commercial and Azure Gov?
Yes, we're actively working on shortening that time gap. I can provide more details on that. The idea is to get quickly as possible to parity. I think every day we're making, advancements in that area. Some of it is slowed down by the certification process, right? All those certifications that I showed on that first page, sometimes it just takes some time to get things certified if it is new capabilities.
Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. I hope you found the content to be helpful. Thank you again to our amazing presenters, Max and Costa, and thank you to Jack, especially for kicking us off and also inviting us back to participate in your series.
Yeah, I want to thank my good friends at HSO for a great presentation. I think it showed really the power of bringing a lot of Microsoft technology together, right? So, leveraging our cloud, leveraging our collaboration tools and communication tools, leveraging our business applications and the formal functionality that is already built into the system, and of course leveraging Azure and the advanced technologies that are there. Great job of displaying the power of that. Microsoft will be worried about the disaster recovery, the failovers, all the upgrades, the patch fixes that you need. We maintain integrations with over 700 third-party applications, so we take a lot of that heavy lifting off the table. But it's really the solutions that our partners bring, leveraging that technology that I think really makes a difference for what we can provide to our customers. If you guys are like me, you're going to think of a million questions as soon as you exit out of this call. Please use me as a primary point of contact. There's also Ron Davis's contact information in this slide here. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining today. I look forward to talking with you guys again soon. Take care, everybody.